everyone, and welcome back to my channel. This is Glossy Philosophy. My name is Jansen Bindman. Make sure that you are subscribed to this channel. Give this video a thumbs up because today we are talking about Shakespeare's A Midsummer Night's Dream. And not only that, but I have a very, very special guest to discuss A Midsummer Night's Dream with me. It is my Helenus from when we were in A Midsummer Night's Dream together a few months ago. So let's get started. Jake, thanks for joining me. We are going to talk about A Midsummer Night's Dream, and the theme of book talks this year is metamorphosis. So before we start talking about Helenus, the character, I want to talk about yours and my journey as like a metamorphosis into Helenus and Hermia. So we're going to start with you. And how did you feel like you were able to hook into Helenus as Jake?
Right. Well, I wish I could look back and like trace out what my journey was, but I had so little experience going into this.
Right.
You were also helpful in that, so maybe I could just trace through what advice I received from you, and I'm like, that's great, I'm gonna go with that. But really, it was just like, I was running blindly through the forest itself, that is Midsummer,
yes.
You know, the forest.
Yes.
And seeing like, that way doesn't work, we'll try like the complete opposite direction. And it was just going back and forth and back and forth. So I wish I had a better answer, just like, I was very, very proper, very professional, like outlined my whole character's psychology and all that. And it was a lot of just vibes at times.
Yeah.
Sometimes like within a single rehearsal, I feel like just the character would kind of flip on me.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'd realize, ooh, let's try that next time. Like I would have an epiphany sometimes within a scene. And I'm like, I'm going to go with that from now on. This is like something I haven't thought of before.
Yeah.
A lot more chaotic than I think.
Then it like came across.
Yeah. It felt it was very much a crazy internal journey.
So this was your first play, like ever, right? And you and I did callbacks. And it's so interesting that you say that because I felt like you already had an understanding of who Helenus was. Were you familiar with the play before auditioning?
So this was not my first play, it's just my first speaking part. So I've been in theater in the past, and I loved Shakespeare since I was in middle school.
Yeah.
And so I read through Midsummer before. I'd seen the movie, but I hadn't seen the play yet. And so I did have a good enough sense. You know, I did research beforehand. I read through all like the fun articles and forums. Like the internet is just flowing.
Right.
As much as I could. So I had that sense, but in terms of just like that immersion, it's a very different perspective you have to achieve of just like, I'm looking at Helenus as it's been portrayed for hundreds of years.
Right.
And what everyone else thinks of it is like, but now I'm Helena, but now I'm Helenus.
Yeah.
And I've got to see it from this whole different perspective now.
Right. Did that mess with your mind, playing like a traditional female role? Or were you just like, sweep it to the side, we're bringing Jake?
It was very much swept to the side.
Okay.
Like, with this production, especially, like, they didn't want to emphasize it. It wasn't like this is a special message they're trying to convey of like, we're switching the genders and this is going to say a lot. It's like, no, it wasn't that big of a deal.
Yeah.
There wasn't anything too big going on. And I think it very elegantly emphasized how, you know, what we're discovering more and more as individuals, as a culture, as just, you know, an entire civilization sort of, of like how much overlap there is between the struggles that women face and the struggles that men face, you know, in this case, in the emotional realm. Yeah. And it's like, and exploring that and like, and what was it about like the female sphere sort of in culture that was trying to be portrayed. I'm like, well, I can't really do that now, but we have to do this entirely new thing. I'm not nearly smart enough to do as good a job of exploring femininity as Shakespeare did now, with just masculine in this very, you know, modern, postmodern take on it. Yeah. But I did my best, and I had my overstudy, my primary to sort of cheat off of. Yeah. Because he was absolutely fantastic. Yeah. And I had all of you to cheat off of, and not trying to like, you know, I'm going to feminize myself a little bit, or I'm going to do like gay coding kind of stuff. Yeah. Never really that. On occasion, I would like sort of say, you know, I sort of noticed myself being influenced by it.
I didn't know when I auditioned that they were going to be doing all the gender flipping. And then when we got our call back and it was Helenus, I was like, huh? Wait a minute. Wait, hold on.
Typo sometimes.
Yeah, like this is different. But then as we were going through the fight scene, which was our callback, I realized that this is brilliant because it took a lot of the cattiness out of it, and it really forced me to think about the words in a different way than if you had been a female coming at me about a guy. You know, it really, I felt like the whole play just became about people rather than male, female.
Right.
Which I thought was really refreshing and really lovely. Because I've never seen Midsummer like that before. It's always very gender versus gender, and then women versus women, especially in the forest. So I thought that was really, really cool. So for me, like, becoming Hermia, I thought I knew who she was because I also have seen the Kevin Kline movie, and I just, like, I felt like I tapped into her right away, and then she just constantly surprised me the more I dug into the words. And I think also because I was playing off of you, and not just you, but also like you as a guy. It was like every rehearsal she showed me something else that was really interesting, and I wanted her to be a little bit more three-dimensional than I felt like she's typically portrayed as. It feels like you get into that fighty, whiny phase like really early with Hermia, and I didn't want that for her. I wanted her to go on this emotional roller coaster journey, which is exhausting, but so fun and so good. And then in the end, you're just joyful with no lines, and that's fine. What was like the biggest thing that's like Hellenist surprised you, like either in rehearsal or when you were working on him on your own? Was there like one thing that really just like, holy smokes, that just kind of gotcha? Or
for sure, yeah. So many little things.
Yeah.
So many more little things that just like make even the larger things seem minuscule in comparison.
Yeah.
Just like these little things they threw in. But I think the largest single thing that was really fascinating was, obviously, out of all the lovers, Hellenist has the longest monologues.
Yes.
They're really long.
Yes.
Like they, he, she, however you want to refer to it here.
Yeah.
Just goes on and on and on.
Yeah.
Like, at certain points, both myself and my oversight, my primary, we went to the director and we said, can we cut some of this out? It's not in like the sense of, you know, it's bad, or is it actually in the sense that, yes, it did really feel like it was lingering for way too long. They are dwelling way too long on this one topic.
Yeah.
And we're not going to slice it in half, certainly. Right. We're going to take 3 lines out and say this one topic is kept for way too long. Yeah. And let's just switch that out. Going back to what you asked at first, like what most surprised me, is that Hellenist is by far the most self-conscious, most like, just within himself. Yes. He can't stand who he is, what's going on around him, and yet he's still so hyperverbal. When she does come out, they come out. Yes. They are all out there, and they're taking over the whole space, despite the fact that they feel like they have this self-hatred about everything they are, and they make it everyone else's problem. It's just like, it's so pathetic. Yes. At times. Yes. It's not always this. And that was another thing that was really interesting, like how, you know, getting to, as we got into more rehearsals, and realizing this character is not only just pathetic, but pathetic in an increasingly unsympathetic way. I was just like, you're just getting annoying now. Interesting. He's like, I'm immediately drawn in by someone who feels bad about themselves. Yeah. You know, that's something that you can draw in certain kinds of people. You know, it's something I really relate to. Yeah. From certain times in my life. Yeah. And so immediately this character's like, oh, I want to, you know, give a big old
yes.
It's going to be fine. Yeah. Then I give it even more time to sort of ferment in my mind and think about it a bit more. It's like, you kind of suck though. You know, your problems do not justify the problems you're causing for other people. Yeah. And so let's explore that a bit more. Right. And so that was really surprising. Of when I read, you know, before this, I always read it as Helena. Yep. And it was like, I was very sympathetic to her. Yes. And what she goes through seems very tough. Mm-hmm. But then I also have to, you know, empathy does have that dark side to it. Right. In real life and in fiction, when you have to realize, yeah, it sucked for her. It also sucked for you, your character, and for everyone else that's sort of getting screwed over here.
Yes.
So that was the biggest thing, I think.
Yeah.
Is finding that contrast in both in, you know, how reserved and verbose, and also in how sympathetic and yet monstrous, and not monstrous might not be the right word, but I think it works really well.
Yeah.
Just like you are causing most of the problems here.
Yes. I know that we talked about that closer to the showtime, how you felt about Helenus, and I was really surprised when you started pulling that stuff out. I just had not even thought about it like that, but it totally makes sense. You're almost like a good guy, bad guy kind of a thing. And I feel like you and Will both brought a different layer to Helenus that I hadn't thought about before. I didn't feel like you were as like weepy puppy as I usually see it, which I liked. I liked that. And did you feel like, I know I felt in the forest scene, I felt like Hermia found her voice, although she gets very aggressive. But like for me, I felt like Hermia was written as like the perfect woman, where she, like the perfect woman for that time period where she's supposed to be following what her dad is saying, and then she breaks away, and that's like kind of not good, but she doesn't ever go against her dad, at least in front of his face. And she asks the king of Athens for help, but not in like a, like, darn you dad kind of a way. It feels very proper, right? And I feel like she starts to find her voice as she continues through the forest and like kind of loses her mind a little bit with like what is happening with you were supposed to be with you and now you're what Did you feel like Helenus found his voice a little bit, especially in our like fight scene?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well it happened even within just, you know, that one big scene.
Yeah.
We had scene 2,
Yeah.
Act 3. It's like, oh, that's gonna be, you know, just those that combination of words is gonna terrify me forever.
Right.
For the longest time, it's like, oh, we don't have it yet, and we have to get it faster.
Yeah.
But for sure, even without that one scene, you know, up until then, Helenus had just sort of been slogging along, doing his best, but it's not enough.
Right.
And then finally we reach what's basically their climax.
Right.
More properly, the climax for the entire play, what was going on.
Yeah, it feels like it.
Of all the different plot lines sort of as they intersect at the end. It was very much that build-up of emotional tension of like just my inhibitions had been broken down now.
Yeah.
It wasn't a healthy way to reach the way I'm supposed to be, which is being much more confident, much more assertive.
Yeah.
Well, you know, perhaps if we had a bit more play to do, I could have also learned to respect other people's, you know, sort of personal decisions and not been all manipulative and then be all weepy about it afterward. But that one scene, it was just like that immediate almost transformation of, you know, I'm getting annoyed by these two ding-dongs who are all in love with me all of a sudden. How dare they? Right.
I always think that's so funny that you don't trust it at all, and you're just like, get away from me.
Right. Like 3 acts ago, this would have been the perfect situation. Bar, you're like, you know, you're person. The force does things to people. Does things to everyone in the play.
It totally does.
And now I can't trust anything.
Right.
I can't trust, you know, the walls and the trees are, you know, very treacherous, and you're all treacherous.
Yeah.
And I, just like you, especially for my own special reasons, the timing is always off.
Right.
The timing is always off.
The timing is always off. Yeah, I know I started at that scene when I really started digging into Hermia, and I really looked at your lines when you were talking about me specifically, and just kind of worked my way backwards as to how I wanted to portray her in the beginning. Because you said, I always feel like when friends bicker, truth comes out. You know, you might not like that truth, but, you know, you called me a vixen, and you called me fierce, and all that stuff, and I thought, I need to show that so that makes sense by the time you say that. And it just gave me this whole idea of Hermia being, like, flirtatious without being like over the top
Right.
flirtatious. And then also, like, I just kind of expect to get my way all the time. And wow, this is really frustrating. So now I'm going to, like, try to gouge your eyes out in that scene. So I always thought your lines were super helpful because it really helped me build Hermia
Right.
from that and going backwards.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that.
Yeah.
I suppose that's very interesting. Like, with how many lines I have, it's really easy to sort of build up this intern, because I think I'm not the only one, but I definitely am for the longest time just on my own, talking to myself.
Yes.
And I can sort of build off of myself just fine.
Yeah.
And then you're all sort of reacting to what I do.
Right.
It's something I never considered, of like, how do you guys build up?
Right.
What you're going through is you kind of have to build off what we're doing.
Exactly.
And a lot of it comes back to me of like what I do.
Yeah. Who did you think, not like acting wise, but like what character did you think went through the biggest metamorphosis?
Oh, speaking of which, definitely Demetrius.
Well, okay. How would you define
Change?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Is it in terms of like just overall change, just holistic, like how does this individual look at the very
Like
beginning?
function
At the very beginning and at the very end, sort of ignoring what happens in the middle.
Yeah.
What's the highest contrast?
Beginning and
It's
ending.
Demetrius.
Yeah, okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And of course, magic helps in that.
Right.
Which may detract a little bit from how you would, sort of qualify or
Right.
value that. What is that change?
Yeah.
He didn't actually go through much emotional turmoil, and that's what we try to emphasize in storytelling.
Right.
Is that internalized? What does this person go through so that they can change on their own?
Yeah.
Sort of grow as a person. Demetrius doesn't really grow.
Right.
But when you ask that question, sort of the first thing that comes to mind is
It's
Demetrius, because he does
That's
have
so
just
interesting.
naturally the most highest contrast.
Yeah.
He changes complete 180. Unfortunately, he doesn't really have much of an arc.
Right.
It's not so much an arc as it is a U-turn
right.
out of nowhere.
Right.
Thanks to our two lovely pucks.
Yeah.
I suppose to answer what I think is closer to what you were asking.
Yeah.
Of,
I feel like I have to take Lysandra and Demetrius, like, they don't count because
right.
their lives get really messed up.
Yeah.
I think this is kind of a tough question.
It's a really tough question, because I don't want to go to myself, because that seems very
But I do feel like
but it
you
does
and
kind of
I.
feel like it. Yeah,
yeah.
You and I definitely have the biggest change in dynamic.
Yeah.
Lysandra. As in sort of the same boat as Demetrius.
Totally. Very steady either way.
Right. Exactly. But then they go back to who they were at the beginning.
Right.
They don't have any change whatsoever. They have a little the U-turn in the middle, and then they get back on track.
Exactly.
And there's no character really. They are your squeeze, essentially.
Yeah.
There's nothing else to their character
Right.
about that.
Yeah, Titania, I feel like also doesn't count because she gets messed with too.
Yeah.
I don't even know if you could put Bottom in there because I feel like he still thinks he's so
All that.
awesome at the end. I think it's even me.
But definitely our dynamic is the one that changes. Our relationship is the one that changes.
Yeah.
We start as friends, we end as friends, but there is a test of that friendship itself, of that dynamic, that's very profound.
Yeah.
I feel.
Yeah.
And of course gets most exemplified in Act 3, Scene 2.
Yeah. I love that. I don't know. I can't remember if this is how it always goes, but I love that at the end of our fight, the guys or whoever have left.
Mm-hmm.
You leave, and then Hermia doesn't try to go and get Lysandra. She goes and tries to get you.
Right.
Or, like, at least she's on the same path anyways. I thought that was really cool. I don't know if they ever thought about that, but I totally did when I left. Which is why I turned back and looked in their direction instead of just delivering it straight to the crowd. Because I was like, I'll deal with that later. I gotta go get my friend.
Yeah, there's a lot going on right there, and I appreciate that.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't do the stage direction, but that's what I was thinking when I said the last of the fight scene. Any other thoughts on Metamorphosis or Midsummer?
There's a whole lot of it.
There's a whole lot. I feel like every time I open up the script, it's like, no way. I didn't even catch that before.
I mean, how it changes in your own mind.
Yeah.
That's a metamorphosis in and of itself.
Yes.
You could apply that to a lot of different things, but if we are on the theme of metamorphosis,
Yes.
it helps a lot to sort of see how much the story changes the first time you read it, how you see it when you're, you know, in the cocoon as opposed to just watching the cocoon from outside.
Yes. Awesome. Thanks, man. Thank you guys so much for watching this very special book talk with my guest, Jake. I hope you enjoyed it as much as we enjoyed making this content for you. Normally I do fashion videos every Wednesday, beauty videos every Friday. This Friday I will be doing a look inspired by A Midsummer Night's Dream. And if you are reading along with me, we are nearing the end of our book talk. So I will have the next few months listed below. But next month we are talking about the book called Once a Girl, Always a Boy, which really blew my mind. So make sure you check that one out from the library or go to your local bookstore and purchase it. And I will see you very soon in the next one. Bye.